This is my review for Life After Manson. So, Life After Manson was released in 2014, and it's a short film based on Patricia Krenwinkel's alleged experience of what led her down the path to follow Charles Manson and obviously eventually become a part of the Tate LaBianca murders, which I have to point out they do not even say that what she was convicted of in this film. This is less than 30 minutes long. I believe is about 24 and some change. So I actually originally watched this years ago, sometime around 2021, give or take, but I decided to rewatch it to review for the sake of the channel. I wanted to see if what was said held up to the actual truth seen in legal documentation. And long story short, it doesn't. But from the start, it's clear that the viewer is supposed to feel bad for Patricia, like as if she was wrongly locked up in prison. The early parts of the film shows her in some sort of group at the prison where it seems that Patricia was trying to play that she was in a bad, intimate relationship, which at one point, I guess probably around 2014, Patricia Krenwinkel's legal team did try to say that she was a victim of intimate partner violence, and basically that was one of the reasons why she should be released on parole. If you're watching this and you don't know what I'm talking about, Patricia Krenwinkel was convicted of murder and originally given the death penalty. This was commuted in 1972 to life in prison, but because the state of California did not have life without parole, Patricia Krenwinkel is technically eligible for parole for the rest of her life. So, until she dies, she can always apply for parole. I just want to point that out there. The film goes on to talk about Patricia's early life, and there's a few snippets of quotes from her mother, Dot. Dot stated that Patricia was a normal girl who did all of the normal things that kids did. Patricia then went on to say that she grew up in a household where basically silence was the way of life. It's very strange when you think about it to see Patricia nearly completely contradict with what her mother said, really, where her mom made it seem like Pat had a warm and friendly and cuddly early life. And then Patricia nearly says that she didn't. So it's like we're supposed to believe that Patricia came from a broken home, but really, at least broken enough for her to potentially not be at fault for committing her crimes. Do I personally believe that Patricia grew up in the best household ever? Technically, no. I think there were problems between her parents that rubbed off on her, but because Patricia refuses to tell the truth about much of her life, it's hard to tell, it's hard to gauge what could have actually happened in her life for her to turn out the way she did. Anyway, so in this film, Patricia seems to place part of the blame for her descent on her now deceased older sister, who of course can't defend herself. And the older sister, who isn't named by the way, was remembered as having been incorrigible, suicidal, and mixed into drugs. So it appears like a cop-out, basically, so that Patricia doesn't have to take accountability for her actions. The way this is portrayed in the movie, it's like as if Pat was some innocent lamb led to the slaughter. It's like as if Patricia was so unaware of anything going on, like as if we're really supposed to believe that she had no sense of self-preservation. There is so much blame placed on everyone else mentioned in this film except for Patricia herself. Pat goes on to lie on camera, basically, saying that her name was changed immediately and she had no money of her own and that she had nothing of her own and was in the middle of nowhere with no way to get back. This is not true. Her name was not changed like it was some sort of cult. Everybody had their, I guess you'll say, I mean, it was nicknames. Everybody had their nicknames, but a lot of this was so that they could avoid the law when they would get caught, because they would use their nicknames instead of their actual legal government names. Of course, this isn't talked about in the film. On top of that, various pieces of Manson literature have all stated that Patricia quit the job she was at after meeting Manson, and she didn't even pick up her last check. She would then go on and get money from her father, which of course, yes, Charles Manson would use. Joseph Krenwinkel unintentionally financed many parts of the Manson family under the idea of him helping out his daughter. According to Jeff Gein's book, Manson, Patricia even wrote a letter to her father where she's quoted as having said, "For the very first time in my life, I found contentment and inner peace." And before I forget, I also want to point out that there's so much emphasis on Manson ruining her life when even when she was after she was convicted and put on death row, Patricia would write poems about Charles Manson. I'll put a link somewhere in the description or, a card or something where I read some of Patricia's poems earlier, like a year or so ago on the channel. I've read some of Patricia's poetry here on the channel, and these are poems clearly about Charles Manson. So, once again, her own writing disproves very much of what she's saying, that she was a victim. No, she loved Charles Manson. She loved him even after she was convicted. She loved him even when she was on death row. She loved him even after the death penalty was abolished. Anyway, the Manson family would travel around, and Patricia was one of these people. Patricia would also be among some of the ones that would be left in different places away from Spawn Ranch. And Diane Lake's book is among those that even states that Patricia would stay and help out with the Fountain of the World and its remaining members after Krishnaventa was killed. I know that Diane Lake's book states this, and I believe also, and I actually think that Carlene Faith's book says this too. And there's other books beyond that. I believe Jeff Gein's book was the first one I ever read about the Fountain of the World connection. But anyway, what's really interesting is how Patricia in this film really tried to portray Charles Manson as this crazy person who forced her to stay with him, making it seem like she was obligated to have sex with him. And yes, I will say Charles Manson was not a great person, and yes, he was crazy in his own way, but from the literature that's out there about the Manson family, she was never, I guess, obligated to have sex with him. Ironically, Tex Watson's book, Will You Die For Me, seems to disprove this. According to Watson, he stated that Patricia would only have sex with Charles Manson because Charlie was the only one that would have sex with her. So, to quote, and this is fair use, by the way, to the person that owns the copyright of that. Anyway, so to quote Tex Watson's book, he stated that even though she was the sweetest of the girls, none of the men except Charlie ever got involved with her sexually. She was a little standoffish and, probably more important, unattractive. When Charlie started trying to get bikers involved with the family by offering them girls, they all complained that Katie was too hairy. For all the talk about love and oneness, I think she must have felt the rejection from the men, and that made her all the more devoted to Charlie. No matter what the others thought, Charlie loved her and would make love to her. Why wouldn't she do anything he asked? I know that some of the other books, like Paul Watkins's, which comes to mind, did mention Patricia having sex with some of the other members. I believe it was in Paul's book where he stated that Clem was one of the ones that did, but didn't seem to have any actual attraction to her. So, of course, it seems like Patricia was devoted to Charlie because he was the only man that showed her any sort of romantic attention ever. And some people are just like that. They will throw their lives away for the sake of attention. So in the film, Patricia goes on to say that Charlie made fun of her in front of the other members of the family, making it seem like he was attacking her and her only. This completely glosses over the fact that many members of the family would be naked in front of each other, exposing themselves. This was something that was talked about, I believe, in Paul Watkins' book, actually. Susan Atkins was actually also one of these people who would be exposed in front of other people, where, to put it bluntly, Charles Manson had told Susan Atkins to bend over. She did, and she exposed her butthole, all because Manson told her to. So Patricia makes it seem like she gave up her life to Manson because she was brainwashed by him. Surely an idea that she was fed by fucking Carleen Faith. The film as a whole tries to portray her as this gullible person who just did what she was told. She states that she started to come to reality when on death row, admitting that she would finally have to take responsibility of the damage and horror she had done. And it's interesting to hear this as she cries crocodile tears for sympathy. All the while, especially ironic, knowing that when she was on death row, even after the death penalty was abolished, she wrote poetry about Charles Manson. I guess my point with that is, was she ever taking accountability if she was writing about the person who brainwashed her? Brainwashed? The film completely glosses over the crimes of which she was a part of. It states nothing about Rosemary LaBianca or Abigail Folger. Patricia is never heard saying their names in this film. They show a recording of part of one of her parole hearings where she claimed that she was doing what she was told. And they had the audacity in this film to show Patricia's fake tears during this parole hearing, yet never show her or never show anything about her saying any of the victims' names. Not once does she mention any of these people's names. And I found that to be disgusting. Not once is the crime at Cielo Drive talked about by Patricia. It's never mentioned how she hissed at Susan Atkins, "Kill her," where she told Susan to murder Sharon Tate. This is in Recollections from Susan's and Tex's books. Patricia put so much emphasis on how her ability to make choices was taken from her by Charles Manson. Yet, she tried to force Susan to make a choice. Did she not? Patricia took away any choices from Abigail Folger, Sharon Tate, Rosemary LaBianca, and Leno LaBianca when she participated in their murders. She almost took away William Garrettson's ability to make choices when she couldn't get into the guest house at Cielo Drive. If the door to the guest house wasn't locked, Patricia would have killed William Garrettson too. The movie speaks nothing of what happened at Waverly Drive. It never mentions how Patricia took the knives out of the kitchen and brought them into the bedroom with Leslie, where they stabbed Rosemary LaBianca to death. Didn't Patricia technically take away some of Leslie's ability to choose when she encouraged her to participate in killing Rosemary? And I know how that probably sounds like, what? So Leslie not culpable? I mean, at this point, 2026, Leslie's released, so what else is there to say? But in my opinion, I will say, this is my personal opinion, I think that Patricia egged Leslie Van Houten on to murder Rosemary. I mean, think about it. Anyway, what to me it's so ironic. She complains, Charles Manson, he took this away from me. It's his fault. It's Charlie. It's Charlie. And it's like, well, all these things that you're saying about Manson could actually be applicable to you towards even Leslie Van Houten. And of course to Rosemary and Lena LaBianca. I mean, what about the part where she mutilated Lena LaBianca's body? Now, some sources say that that was Tex Watson, but one way or another, Patricia acts like she's not culpable. And that's the worst part of this whole film. She complains that Manson is the reason why she's in prison, but she can't seem to admit that she took away the ability for multiple people to choose. With the actions that she committed on those 2 nights of which she willingly went to go. I found the film to be disgusting, of course, and completely tramples over the victims. Why should we feel bad for this convicted killer? The only reason she is still alive to this day is because the state of California overturned the death penalty. I agree with Doris Tate when Doris had stated many, many decades ago that they should have been executed. I agree with Miss Tate on that. The end of the film concludes with Patricia spewing all of this garbage that she clearly learned from the decades of lessons that she's had in classes while in prison. It's clear to me that she is some sort of a sociopath that truly believes that if she says the right things, she'll get what she wants without actually putting in the effort to make it work or doing the right thing. To me, she was repeating everything that she was very obviously taught with the hopes that it would appear genuine. But how genuine is it if she can't even apologize to the murdered people or their families? She didn't apologize in this film, at least. The film makes it seem like we should feel sorry for Patricia because she was just a gullible woman in a bad relationship. Yet, if someone were truly this naive, this proves that they still shouldn't be released to the public. If you could be convinced to kill, then what would stop from it happening again? What's also gross to me is that it's like Patricia was trying to portray herself as not a convicted serial killer. Ironically, this is misogynistic in a way. Just because someone has XX chromosomes doesn't mean they can't be criminals too. It's like implied that because she's a woman, she can't be evil, right? I think that this mentality goes back to when she was initially locked up, where many of the early news articles were seemingly shocked that the Manson girls committed the crimes they did because of the mentality that women are typically loving, sweet, and kind. And this is something that I had read about when I was in college for my degree for criminal justice stuff, that typically people don't believe when a woman would commit violent crimes, but that's because it is extremely rare for a woman to commit violent crimes. So that doesn't mean women like Patricia Krenwinkel don't exist. Patricia Krenwinkel is an example of a woman who has committed violent crimes willingly. Unless you're deep in the Manson rabbit hole, like me, this isn't worth the watch. Honestly, you'd have to be deep into it to understand how much Patricia is lying in this film. She was clearly preying on the gullible, which I really think that the people who made this film were gullible. The people who made this film honestly kind of seemed like they believed her. It's clear to me that they didn't read any of the court transcripts, which in 2014 I believe were available on Cielo Drive's website. To me, it seems like Patricia was preying on the gullible and or anybody that doesn't know the full extent of her participation in the crimes, and Patricia is trying to make people feel sorry for her. I think that much of Patricia's defense has always been about making people feel bad for her because she has always been seen as the ugly girl. Like, oh, it's not her fault. She's unattractive and no one likes her. She committed her crimes because she was so lonely. But that's not the case, and nor does that excuse murder. Patricia chose to be at the murders at both nights. She chose to go. Don't let shallow arguments like hers fool you. So on Letterboxd, I gave this a half star, which is the lowest you can go while still rating a film. This whole film is clearly a ploy for sympathy in the hopes of her getting parole, which thankfully has not happened. I suppose that the only thing I can truly say about this, and in a way to Patricia by extension, is you're only fooling you. Look at your game, girl. You're only fooling you.